After a brilliant weekend of racing at the Austrian Grand Prix, we had a fantastic sprint race, which probably equals the sprint that we've seen in the Brazilian Grand Prix, which is also fantastic. We had a lot of action, didn't we? And then we also had the crazy track limit fiasco, even the result changing about 5 hours after the Grand Prix. Some big losers, some big changes after Aston Martin launched that protest. Let's go through and rate the drivers. Max Verstappen again got another clean sweep of P1s, fastest in practice, the sprint shootout sprint, and won the race handsomely. He then also had the cheek to pit on the last lap to get the fastest lap of the race. A 10 out of 10, nothing you can say about that one. Charles Leclerc next, who finished second in the Grand Prix. He actually had a really good qualifying, just missing out on pole position by half a tenth. Finally, that Ferrari showing some raw pace, but he had a bit of a scruffy sprint race, didn't he? But a really solid P2 position, never really came under threat there, and actually read the Grand Prix for the first time in quite a little while. An 8 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. Next, Sergio Perez, he finished third place. He actually had a shocking qualifying session, didn't he? Started way down in 15th. He had a much better sprint race. His shootout was there half a second off Max Verstappen, but he had a good battle at the start of the sprint race, didn't he, with Max. Bit of argy-bargy, which was great to see, and a good recovery in the race. Actually wasn't fantastic and wasn't what we really want from Red Bull and Perez. I imagine if Verstappen was 15th, he would have won that race from there, but not quite Perez. But a good confidence booster as he had a poor run. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. Lando Norris, who finished 4th in the race, actually had a brilliant qualifying session, a really good shootout. Anti-stall cost him in the sprint race, but a really brilliant race for him, finishing P4. He gained a position after the penalty for Carlos Sainz. Solid race. Fantastic to see McLaren back at the front fighting again. A 9 out of 10 for Lando. Fernando Alonso actually finished 5th in the end after what I think has been a bit of an underwhelming weekend for Aston Martin. They seem to have lost pace, and they're sort of scratching their heads wondering where that pace has gone for them. I think they will be disappointed, but a decent result in the end, but not fantastic for Fernando. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10 for him this weekend. Carlos Sainz got a brilliant podium in the sprint race, didn't he? A fantastic battle with Sergio Perez. The double stack actually cost him in the race, and also that points penalty for track limits after the Grand Prix. He'll be disappointed with that, but he was on it all weekend, was Carlos Sainz. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 for him. Next up, George Boy Russell. He had a scruffy weekend, didn't he? He had a poor qualifying and shootout. They were off the pace all weekend. A weekend to forget for Mercedes. 4 out of 10 for George. Lewis Hamilton, who actually ended up finishing 8th in the race after the track limits penalties after the race. He also got one during the race as well. He was really angry and he really struggled with this Mercedes. They were really underperforming. The car was absolutely nowhere. They were lost, weren't they? Really disappointed at how bad they were. Lewis Hamilton seemed off it once he found out sort of how bad his car would be this weekend. I'm going to give 4 out of 10 for him. Lance Stroll, who actually ended up finishing 9th after he moved up a position after Gasly's penalty. He had a much better weekend. He was closer to Alonso, who's actually beat him in the sprint race, didn't he, as well? But a not so great race. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Pierre Gasly, who's finished 10th in the end. They've had a scruffy weekend, Alpine. They seem to have dropping out of this top 10 battle, aren't they? After decent Monaco Grand Prix results, the team have sort of fallen back from that, and they were not really on it. They had a poor qualifying and sprint, but he's got a point for the Alpine team in the end of Gasly. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10 for him. Next up, Alex Albon, who actually finished 11th in the race. They've just been on the edge of this top 10 battle all weekend, haven't they? I kind of expected a bit more performance out of the Williams, but I think McLaren were the big surprise of how well they've done here. But he'll be glad to be fighting for top 10 and points again in that Williams. He did get a couple of penalties for the track limits, so he was a bit disappointed on that one, but I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10 for him. Next up, Zhou Guanyu, who finished 12th. He was promoted 2 places after the penalties were dished out. He was actually disappointed. They were kind of hoping for a points or a top 10 battle with Alfa Romeo, but it wasn't quite to be for him this weekend. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10 for him. 13th place for Logan Sargent. Yes, he's off the back of the grid. It wasn't a great weekend up until the race, was it? He had a poor qualifying, was near the back, a poor sprint race also, but a much much better race result for him in the end. 13th place, yes, not fantastic, no points, but at least he's off the back of the grid and he can probably hope to take some momentum into the British Grand Prix next weekend. A 7 out of 10 for Logan. Ocon, who finished 14th at the end, he actually got a point in the sprint race, didn't he, which was decent. But again, like his teammate Gasly, the car really struggled all weekend. He ended up getting 30-second penalty for track limits. I mean, I don't know what circuit he's been driving this weekend, but not a great performance from him. I'm going for a 5 out of 10 for Ocon. Next up, Valtteri Bottas. He had a good qualifying session, but a really poor sprint day, didn't he? And then in the race, he went backwards, finished 15th in the end. I'm going for a 4 out of 10 for him this weekend. Oscar Piastri, he's finished P16. He was well off the pace of Lando Norris, wasn't he? He got lap 1 damage with the collision with Magnussen, and otherwise he was really down and disappointed after the weekend. I'm going for a 5 out of 10 for Oscar. Nick De Vries, he actually finished P15, didn't he, but got demoted 2 places after the 15-second track limit penalties that were added to his race time. And actually he showed poor racecraft in the race with shoving Kevin Magnussen off the track, and actually cost him both and Magnussen in the race. Decent but poor overall. I think he'll still be disappointed, but a 5 out of 10 for Nick De Vries. Next up, Kevin Magnussen. He had a really good sprint race, didn't he? Got a point for the Haas team, but actually in the race it was so hard on the tyres with that Haas, he just struggled and went backwards. I'm going for a 6 out of 10 just for that point. Next up, Yuki Tsunoda. He's finished 19th. He had a really scruffy race, didn't he? Got a couple of penalties, and he'll be disappointed. He was beaten by his teammate this weekend. A 4 out of 10 for Yuki. Nico Hülkenberg, he'll be really disappointed. He was on for a great weekend, wasn't he? Had a really good qualifying, got 4th place in the sprint shootout, finished 6th in the sprint race, but the DNF with the power unit failure really cost him. I'm going for a 7 out of 10 because it was brilliant up until that point. And that wraps up the driver ratings. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. Watch out for the next video coming in a couple of days time for the preview of the British Grand Prix, the home of motor racing. I can't wait for that to get started. It's always been a fantastic race there. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always, and I'll see you in the next video.